Hi, and welcome back to Gavin's Sonex B. Well, it's time to start building the engine. I've been ill for a few days, and that's given the postal service the time to catch up with the project. And so the things I've ordered have arrived, and now I have everything I need, I think, in order to carry on and build the engine. So I'll show you what's arrived. So from left to right, we've got some aviation former gasket number 3. We've got some molybdenum, no, that's not how you say it, but you know what I mean, molybdenum, yeah, grease. We've got some white lithium grease. We've got a few different varieties of Loctite, medium strength and high temperature. A piston ring compressor, as I didn't have one. And that's about it. So with those things I can now carry on. And I've also corrected the mistake in the last video that I made in that I hadn't drilled and tapped a hole for the oil return from the second oil pump for the turbo, and the tap arrived earlier in the week, and I successfully drilled and tapped it and put the fitting in, and all is good, and it looks a little bit like this. So the two halves are split at the moment, and this is the oil filler. The engine half is on its side at the moment, and you can see the hole that's been drilled, tapped, and has the fitting in it. And I don't know whether you can see down the inside there. I've basically tapped it so that it just very fractionally pokes out on the inside, but I'm not sure you'll be able to see it down there. Anyway, so I've done that. I've split the two halves, as you can see. One half's over there. We won't need that for a minute. This is the one we're going to be working on. And I've also unboxed a few bits and pieces. So I've got my pre-assembled crankshaft and hub. I've assembled the cam gear on the front of the cam shaft, and that's done. I've got the con rods out of their little box. Then we've got the bearing shells to go inside them, and then there's a number of other little bits and pieces that we're going to be using as we go along. But for the moment, tonight's task is to assemble the con rods onto the crankshaft, and for that we're going to need some lithium grease, and we'll call it molly grease. Also going to need a torque wrench and some sockets as well. Just as a by the by, it shows that some people actually watch these videos. I don't know why, but anyway. We had Jonathan, who thanked me for making the videos. That's very kind of you, Jonathan, and said that basically the beginnings of my videos were a bit quiet, and was there any way that I could turn the volume up? Yes, there is. I can shout. No, there's no volume control. It's just me. So if I'm being too quiet, please tell me and I'll speak up a bit. And then we had Wendy, who's also building a bee, and she contacted me and said thank you very much for the videos, and I asked her about which engine she was putting in, and she's using an Aero Momentum engine, and sounds like she's almost at the same stage as me. She's saying that she's going to get it on its wheels very shortly. She hasn't done any online blog or anything like that. Wendy, get your camera out, stick some stuff on YouTube. Let us see what you're doing. And then finally, we've got Anthony Strawbridge. Now, I like Anthony. He always comments on my videos, or has done for the last few anyway. And he is a mine of experience and information. And I'm very grateful to the comments that he puts against the videos. I like to read them and share in his experiences from his many years, it sounds, in the aviation business. So thank you, Anthony. Anyway, I'm going to get on and do some assembly work. So basically, it's a bit like this. The conrods here are split into two pieces, so you can put them onto the crankshaft, and inside each, actually it goes around the other way, inside each half are the bearing surfaces which need to be inserted into them. They just push into place. There is an anti-rotation notch on the end of it, which has to fit into a little anti-rotation notch in the casting itself. It's important to keep them in matched pairs. You have to make sure that the two halves are round the right way as well, so they're numbered on one side, although you can actually use the anti-rotation tags to identify they should be together on one side. And once I've given them a little wipe out, put these shells in, there'll be a little bit of lithium grease, which is used as a lubricant for first startup, because obviously there's no oil in the oil system when you first start the engine. So use a bit of lithium grease just to make sure everything rotates until the oil takes over, and then washes the lithium grease away. And we'll be using a little bit of moly grease on the threads for the nuts to go on, just to lubricate them whilst we torque them up with a torque wrench. So I shall busy away and do some of that, and I'll let you know what happens shortly. So I've done 3 out of the 4, and I thought I'd just do the last one with you. Here's the conrod, and well, the top half of it anyway. Here's the bearing. First thing is wipe the conrod nice and clean. Make sure there's nothing there at all. Take the bearing, line up the little notch in one end with the hole in that, and press it in. And there we go. That's that one in place. And then the same process for the bottom half, is get the notch lined up, press it in, and there it is. Once it's like that, we need a bit of lithium grease. Paint it into the bearing like that. And paint it into the bearing little bit of molybdenum, molly, I'll just call it molly, on the thread. Like that. And then this one has got to go around this way, so the notch at the bottom, slide it on to the journal, notch at the bottom, and slide it onto the bolts, and then pop the two nuts on a bit like that. And then these have to be torqued up in 4 stages to 29 pounds-feet. More later. So I've torqued them all down, and everything's done up nice and tight, no issues. Using the smaller of the 3 torque wrenches I've got. Had to convert the pounds-feet into Newton meters because obviously I'm in a country that's metric, and Newton meters is what we use mostly in Europe. So what's next? Well, the next thing to do is to finish preparing the crankcase to take the camshaft and the crankshaft. So we'll have a look at what's needed for that. So I've got out the cam followers, and these are the 2 oil pressure relief valves. One is an overpressure valve, which I understand only comes into play when you first start the engine, when the oil is really thick, and it basically acts as a bypass to keep the oil in the engine and not through the oil cooler. And then that's this one here, and the longer spring, and then the shorter one is the oil pressure relief valve, which is in normal use when the engine's running and warmed up, or so that's how I understand it. Next to that, we've got some little pins here which are to locate the main bearings into the crankcase, and then these are the cam bearings themselves, the little bearing inserts, and then we've got the main bearings for the crankshaft and some seals. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the high pressure valve in, and that's going in there like that. I've previously put some oil on it, and then we need the big spring, and the big spring follows it in, and then theoretically you've got to try and push the spring in and do it up. And there it is, all tightened up and in place. So now the lower pressure one is the next one. So we've got the valve itself, the short spring, the seal and the nut, and that's all going in that hole there. So I'll do that and report back. So there we are, both of the valves are installed and tightened up. So now we're going to carry on with the preparation of the crankcase, and there are some seals to seal the studs that hold the two halves of the crankcase together, so they need to be put on. They're little round O-rings and look a bit like this. They basically just slip over one of the studs and go down to the bottom a bit like that. So I'll get on and do the other 5 and I'll be back in a minute. So there we are, all 6 seals are in place, and next we need to put in the anti-rotation bearing, main bearing pins, which are these tiny little things here, and they just drop into the holes a bit like that. So there are our pins in situ, 4 of them, and now we're going to do the cam bearings, and there are 3 different ones. There's a thin one, a wide one, and one with flanges on either end. The thin one goes at the rear of the engine, the flywheel end. The wider one is the center one, and then the one with the ears on, you have to well, if I look at the one I haven't done yet, they've got a little tab on it, anti-rotation tab, and for this installation you need to file that off like this one with a fine file, because there is no anti-rotation knockout in there. So that one's going there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a bit of a clean and then gently press them in, and I'll be back in a minute. So there we are. There are the 3 camshaft bearings, which I've just gently pressed into place, and that's basically this half complete. So I've carried on and done the other half as well, and all that needs doing to that one is a dowel pin put into the center bearing position, and the other halves of the camshaft bearings, which go in a bit like that. And so that's the crankcase prepared, ready to take the camshaft and the crankshaft. So that's what we're going to be doing next. But I think this video is long enough as it is, so we'll call it quits here and pick it up the next time. So stay tuned, it's getting exciting. See you later.